He was
Yes,
on
I
the
saw him
platform.
on the platform.
Yes. Mr. Cuthbert, Chair.
Morning, Chair.
Good morning.
Mr. Thring, Chair.
Morning, Chair. Morning, colleagues.
Good morning.
Ms. Muatse, Chair. Ms. Muatse is on the platform, Chair. Mr. Mulder, Chair.
Good morning, Chair.
Good morning.
Chair, Ms. McPherson just let him in again. Those are the
Oh.
members currently on the platform, Chair. Others may
Okay.
still join us due to connectivity challenges they may have, Chair.
Okay. But we are quorate.
We are correct, we can proceed, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. May we have the agenda, please?
Chair,
Members,
we
do we have the agenda? Can we hear whether there are any apologies, Secretariat?
Chair, we have an apology from Prince Bernstein Ramashi. He will be joining us late, Chair. He's just on a flight to Cape Town. So as soon as he lands, he will join the committee. And Mr. Malamatia just also was on the platform, Chair, as we were speaking.
Okay. Thank you. Can we have a move and a second for the adoption of the
Recording in
agenda?
progress.
Chair, Mr. Mbuyani, Chair.
Honorable Mbuyani.
Honorable Chairperson, thank you very much. I propose that we adopt the agenda as reflected. Thank you.
Thank you. Can we have a second for that proposal? Members, I need
I second, Chair. Member Wayne Thring.
Thank you. Thank you, Honorable Thring. So the purpose of this briefing from the IDC is to engage on its financial and non-financial performance for the first and second quarter of 2022-23 financial year. This is so that the committee, as we have done before, can assess the performance of the National Department against its resource allocation in compliance with Section 5 of the Money Bills Amendment Procedure and Related Matters Act of 2009. Can I just be guided who is here from the department to introduce the entity?
The Chair, Ms. Matumela, is here from the department to introduce the entity, Chair.
Thank you. Honorable, sorry, not Honorable, Ms. Matumela.
Good morning, Chairperson, Honorable Chairperson, and the honorable members. Chairperson, we want to thank the Portfolio Committee for the opportunity to present the work of the IDC this morning, and also for the interaction with the honorable members. From the IDC side, Chair, we have the Chairperson of the IDC board. We also have the CEO of the entity, Mr. T.P. Tonto, and he is with his executive team, and he will introduce the executive team, Chairperson. Thank you. And from the department, Chair, before I go from the department side, we also have Ms. Susan Mangole, who is from the policy division within the GTIC. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Over to you, CEO. You can introduce your team and then start the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. With your permission, could I please ask the Chairperson of the board, Mebusi Mabuza, to maybe say a word before we as the executives take over?
Oh, thank you. My apologies, Honorable Chair of the board. Please proceed.
No problem, Honorable Chair, honorable members. We really appreciate and always value the opportunity to come and report back on our performance against the corporate plan that we submit to this House. As indicated by my colleague from the department, Ms. Matumela, we are looking at the performance up until the end of September, in a very difficult environment. But I hope you'll agree with us that management has actually rolled up their sleeves and done the work that is expected of them. We have benefited a little bit from some tailwinds, and hopefully that will show in the numbers. Thank you so much, Honorable Chair and Honorable Members. May I hand over to the CEO, because this is about the work that's done by management, and he'll introduce the executive team as well. Thank you, TP.
Thank you very much, Chair of the Board.
Thank you, Chairperson of Committee, and thank you, Chairperson of the Board. If I may please ask my colleagues, members of the executives who are here to put their cameras on, just for our intro to the committee. Mr. Isaac Malevu is the Chief Financial Officer at the Industrial Development Corporation, the CFO. CFO, thank you very much for being here. And Mr. David Jarvis is the Division Executive responsible for Strategy and Corporate Affairs at the IDC. So he also holds primary responsibility to liaise with parliamentary committees as well as the department. And my colleague Gerald Tinonetsana is the manager in my office. He's office support manager in my office. And then from strategy as well, the colleague who was on the screen now is Christopher Nzeil. He's one of the senior champions, managers in the strategy team. Chairperson, thank you so much for welcoming us here. And we will now get on right into the business of the day. And with your permission, members, I will put my camera off. And then my colleague, Gerald, will assist me to fly to the presentation. The outline of the presentation is as indicated on the screen. We are going to cover some background information as to, why are we here, and then talk about our development impact work. So in other words, the work that we are doing, which is core to the IDC in terms of investment, financing of industry and businesses and infrastructure. We will share with this committee a couple of case studies. And then we will talk from a financial dimension and talk about the standing, the performance of the organization, its profit and loss or profit income statement. We will talk about the cash situation. We'll talk about the balance sheet, the assets, the liability profile of the organization, really covering its total health as an organization. Then we will touch briefly on the dimensions relating to organizational capability. In other words, the IDC as a state organ in terms of its capability in line with the aspiration of this nation to build a capable state through capable institutions. And then we will close off, Chairperson, by reflecting for the rest of the year. Moving forward, Chairperson, as the Chairperson of the Board indicated, we are here to report against our annual performance plan, commonly referred to as a corporate plan at the IDC, a document that we submit to Parliament on an annual basis. And then periodically we are called to this committee and other committees in order to give an account of how we are performing relative to that annual plan. So we will primarily, as I indicated, cover those three areas: development, impact work, financial performance, as well as the capabilities of the organization where we are. Thank you, Chairperson. This particular slide is important from a policy alignment perspective. On an annual basis, when we put together our annual performance plan, the corporate plan, they are done so in collaboration, in partnership with the department that we account to, the DTIC, and we get together under the leadership of the principals at the DTIC, and we then reconcile properly what the priority areas should be in order to align with the national efforts. And the national efforts, Chairperson, as we all know, are aimed at basically 4 items. One is to grow the economy through investment from the IDC's perspective. Second is creating employment, or at least preserving employment. The third priority area is creating an inclusive economy, inclusive transformation in line with the various legislation and other policy prescripts of this country, measures being taken in the transformation arena to include more Black people into the economy, more women, more young people as part of the transformation agenda, creating an inclusive economy. And then thirdly, to the point I made earlier, contributing to building a capable state by ensuring that the IDC itself is a capable institution. So those are the 4 areas of emphasis. And indeed, we indicate in this slide, Chairperson, this one here, which is on the screen, that indeed we are measured from an industrial development point of view in terms of investment flows, money that finds its way into the economy, how we support the various industry master plans, how we perform against localization and beneficiation objectives. I've touched on the point at the center of the screen regarding transformation as well as the funding of small and medium-sized businesses. We will show the numbers relating there too, as well as, of course, the state of the IDC as determined by our efficiency of service, as well as our customer service quality, as well as internal organizational health as reflected by our culture as an organization. Moving forward, Chairperson, and now we are coming to the performance numbers for this period that we are reflecting on. And I just want to restate again, Chair, and I'll keep reminding the committee that we are reporting for the period to September 2022. In other words, the first 6 months only of the financial year. Chair, you will see the graph on the left-hand side, the brown one. The numbers were low in 2020. This was the year of COVID. 2021, we showed a remarkable recovery with the volumes of approvals totaling 16 billion for the year. And to Q2 for the current financial year, the last column there, which is in a red dotted square, or there we indicate that as of that period, we have advanced just over 10 billion rand in approved transactions. That number is even higher now in February, where we are today. In terms of the disbursements, a similar trend we see on the blue graphs. We have, as at the end of Q2, advanced, paid out, disbursed a total of just over 8.4 billion rand. It is higher than the total for the whole of last year. The whole of last year, we know we were recovering from the 2020 impacts of COVID. You can just have a look at that light blue figure. I mean, we were very low, around 2 billion for the same period last year in 2021. And for the same period in 2022, we have disbursed 4 times that at the level of 8.4 billion. Thank you, Chairperson. If we can move forward. This is the area where we are falling short in our performance indicators, and the details will show a little later. And this is the area of funding towards transformation. Money that we advanced, as I said earlier on, for Black economic empowerment, for Black industrialist programs, for women and youth-owned companies. Members, the economy has been difficult. We have very ambitious targets in this regard. As you can see from previous years, the trends have been very good. However, there was a massive dip in 2020. We all understand what was going on there during that year. We recovered well in 2021, but where we were as of September last year, you can see the light blue color. We are ahead of where we were last year, but certainly relative to our target, as we will show in the next few slides, falling short. Chairperson, this is an extraordinarily important area of our work. Extraordinarily so, because it is provided for in the statutes of the IDC that this institution will not only advance industrial development, but it will seek strongly to redress the imbalances of the past, create stronger inclusion of those who for years have not had the opportunity. All this, you as the policymakers and the legislators understand much, much more than I do, the imperative thereof. So we will show how far we are progressing. We think we might have been short at halfway mark, but we are really confident of ending relatively strong as we tally up the numbers at the end of the full year in March, just day after tomorrow. Or tomorrow really, March is starting tomorrow. So the next slide, Chairperson, talks about employment, jobs that we have either created and or saved in aggregate. Again, a very similar pattern. 2021, the economy was flat on its stomach, hardly doing anything. That is 2020 as a result of COVID. Then we saw a remarkable recovery in employment creation and jobs saved in 2021-22. In total, for the whole year, 27,000 jobs. This year, as of half year, September, we are already at 14,700 jobs that we have managed to either save or create through the various financing and investment instruments as the IDC. So we're trying our best in a very, very, very difficult economic environment where, unfortunately, for various economic and other binding constraints in the economy that you members of the committee will be familiar with, businesses are indeed having a tough time out there. We see it every day at the IDC. You will recall, members, in 2021, a lot of the jobs that we reported on were jobs that were recovered or from the businesses that were destroyed by the riots in the first instance. A lot of the businesses that we funded came back to life and jobs were restored. And then the second impact was the floods in 2021-22 year. We assisted a lot of businesses to come back on their feet and we recovered a lot of jobs during that past financial year. But we are on a good pathway as far as employment creation for the current financial year. Chair, the next slide, we may need to spend a bit of time on this so that we can provide a proper perspective. Let me start on the left-hand side. The second line from the top, it says there, value of on-balance sheet funding disbursed. This is money paid directly out of the IDC's own balance sheet out of our own resources, not third-party money that we are managing on behalf of others. Share the comparative figures there, year to date as at September 22. You see the target was 9.9 billion and we achieved just over 8.3 billion. Sort of marginally shy, about a billion or so shy of our target as at that point. So yes, lower, but the point we are making is that we are not very far off, and we think we will recover to year end. And then the figures that follow thereafter, we are significantly off target, and indeed we can discuss that. I've already touched on the various constraints that we are facing. If you look at the line there that says Black industrialists, funding facilitated Black industrialists, our target was 2.5 billion, 2589, and we did 2527. So yes, just very marginally missed that target, but I think it is a decent performance as at that point. And then of course, the other lines that follow thereafter, members, honestly, that is where we are falling short. Indeed, we can do better on women entrepreneurs and youth, and we are trying our best to ensure that we finish as strongly as possible. So we are admitting where we are falling short in this regard. On the localization and beneficiation, Chairperson, that line, please stay with that slide, please. I will tell you when to move. Our target was 4.2 billion. As you can see, we touched about 3.9 billion, almost 4 billion. Again, missed this one by about 300 million or so. We think we will recover it before the end of the year. And then when you look at the jobs, number of jobs expected to be created or saved from committed funds, our target for that period ending September was 16,000 jobs, and we did 15,700. Again, missed it marginally by about 500 or so jobs. So again, we believe not a bad performance on that particular line, and we hope and we are confident that we, over the past 6 months of the second half of the year, we will close the gap. So Chairperson, I just wanted to touch on those. And then on the right-hand side, it's the same kind of logic, really, if you look at the work that we are doing in tourism, very little, because as members may appreciate, the tourism sector is very difficult. Nobody is building new facilities like lodges or hotels or anything like that. It's more supporting existing businesses in that particular sector. But as you can see, with regards to the areas of infrastructure, our support to the poultry master plan, and the sugarcane master plan, as well as the plastics master plan, we have done quite well relative to the targets that we had set for ourselves. And yes, of course, other elements we have fallen short. So it's a little bit of a mixed bag like that. But we are confident to do well by the end of the year. So that, Chairperson, really covers our development impact measures. So in other words, the money that we advance to the economy, exactly what does it translate to? Which areas of the economy does it touch in terms of capital formation, employment creation, greater inclusion, localization, beneficiation, and so on and so on. So that is the picture then, and I'm sure we will have a discussion in that regard. Chair, the next couple of slides, with your permission, members, honorable members of this committee, I will fly through these case studies very quickly. This particular business here in the agricultural sector, we advanced 34 million and we drew another 18 million from the funds that have been placed in our administration by the Department of Agriculture and Land Reform. It's a blended financing program here where we fund some of the loans and we take some of the money in the form of a grant. Sorry, apologies. So this was in support of the Poultry Master Plan. The next one is a very good project that we are very proud of. It is a mining services company. They specialize in drilling for mining companies, especially that operate open pit mines. And here they have been contracted by a huge platinum mine in the Pilanesberg area called Sidibelo or Pilanesberg Platinum Mines. And they do a great job. I have visited this mine. I have seen these chaps in action. They are indeed a very committed group of true entrepreneurs that are at the core of the mining industry. We have advanced about 50 million and created that number of jobs as indicated there. The next one, members of committee, that I would like to talk about. No. Oh yes, it's this particular one. We can just go through it. It's in the food industry as well. The next one, Art Solar, is a company that manufactures solar panels. This is an area of work that we as the IDC are continuing to expand. So in other words, we're looking for all sorts of opportunities for local manufacturing of panel systems. And we are working the IDZ in the Eastern Cape. There's an initiative in KZN as well. But this is the one that we did as at September last year. And we are very proud of this one. Next, very important work, committee members, that we are doing in the implementation of the Social Employment Fund. You may recall that this is the one that was initiated from the presidency as part of the economic recovery post-COVID. The IDC was allocated money and we identified 28 implementation partners throughout the country. And these implementation partners in various sectors have indeed initiated projects that have created just over 50,000 part-time work opportunities. And in total, from the Social Employment Fund, the IDC has then dispersed 360 million in wages that are paid directly to workers whose work is coordinated by these implementation partners. So very great work indeed. As we indicate there, a total of 1.1 billion rand is available, and then we are dispersing it progressively as the projects are rolled out. The next one I will not touch on is in the resources field. It's a mineral resources processing project. Again, typical of IDC, a real value-adding industrial enterprise. The next one is a raisin business, again, agro-processing as part of our agro-industrial mandate. The next one is a farm in the poultry environment as well. I hope members had the opportunity to browse through it. The next slide. And then if we can please move on to the next one, which is a project in KZN, which is another interesting project that manufactures various chemical type products, true industrial projects indeed. And so members of committee and chairperson, these case studies bring to the end our presentations with regards to development activities. And now we will move and touch on financial aspects of the IDC. And it starts with this slide here, where as a group, this is the IDC, the company, the IDC, and then the blue area there shows the various subsidiaries in which the IDC has majority interests. The Telo one used to be a 50-50 JV. It has just changed over the past couple of months into where we now have a minority interest. So it should be out of that list there, Telo rolling stock. Apologies for that. And then, of course, the major associates are the ones where we are a minority shareholder, and there are several of these businesses, as you can see. So all of these companies constitute what is referred to as the IDC group. But for today, Honorable Chairperson and Honorable members, we will only be reporting on the mini group, the IDC itself, and then touching a little bit on the financial performance of the subsidiaries that are indicated in blue. With that, if we could move on to the next slide. As I've just said, these are the results overview of the IDC itself, as it is referred to as the mini group. And this is where we are, members, and I will refer you to the last two columns on the right-hand side, because we are comparing there the actual results to September 2022 compared to the budget to September 2022. So in terms of headline income revenue, again, really a very strong performance, benefiting from the dividend receipts that we get from the various subsidiaries. We budgeted 4.5 billion. The IDC achieved 10.4 billion, almost double what we had budgeted for. Our profit budget was 1.9 billion. We achieved a profit number of 6.7 billion rand, almost 6.8 billion. And then the line that I want to comment on is the one that says there, cost to income ratio. And this is important because we indicate the extent to which we stringently manage our operating costs, our expenses as an institution relative to the revenue. So that percentage is a percentage of costs over the revenue line. Of course, when the revenue line goes higher, that ratio itself would go down as well. But as we will show the actual rand values in the next few slides, indeed, our expenses are very much under control. In the middle there, balance sheet items, total assets. You realize we had budgeted 160 billion in the form of assets, total assets, but the actual number of aggregate assets as at September was about 150 billion. This marginal decline really is attributable to the decline in the value of listed shares, the shares that we hold in listed companies such as Sasol, Exxaro, Kumba, Billiton. So they fluctuate, as we know, and when they do go down, there is a decline overall in the total asset endowment of the IDC. But as we can see, the decline has not been major at all. Members might recall the dramatic decline we experienced in 2020 when COVID hit. So this is sort of under normal circumstances. So Chairperson, I think we can maybe move on to the next slide. Really, this is a commentary on the figures that have just been shown before. I indicate here that the dividend income that we received of about 6.9 billion from the listed and unlisted investments, our equity investments, and our interest income was high because indeed the size of our loan book has increased, as we will show in the next slide, but also we are aware that interest rates have gone up progressively over the past number of months globally and indeed in South Africa. And indeed, as I indicated, our operating costs flat and about 0.7% below what we had budgeted for. So I commented already on the debt to equity ratio. Thank you very much. We can move on to the next slide. And this particular slide, Chairperson, is really a detailed presentation of the income statement of the IDC. The column that I will talk to is the one right in the middle. It says 30 September 2022 actual. As I shown it in the previous slide, 10 billion in the form of revenue coming from dividends as well as interest income. And it is very pleasing to see those numbers. And then, of course, our borrowing costs were low. Actually, on a net basis, it's like, but this is after foreign currency translation. But our finance charge is indeed very much in line. There it is, 1.239 billion, which is our finance charges, our interest expenses, because the organization did not borrow a lot of money as at that particular period, and therefore our borrowing level remained fairly stable and low. There are the operating expenses line, marginally lower than we had budgeted for. So we are controlling our expenses prudently. The impairments, there is the impairment line. Yes, the IDC, by nature of its business, has to periodically review the loans that are non-performing, the equity investments that have perhaps fallen into distress, and periodically we do write off investments. It is part of the financial organization like the IDC or DBSA and so on. So, but what is important is that the write-off numbers or the impairment numbers are really low relative to that 9.7 billion rand operating income line. The problem for any organization is when its investment losses, the impairments and the write-offs wipe off the entire income line. So we are not like that. We have quite a solid operating income profile and quite a low bad debt profile. So at the end of it all, at the bottom there, Chairperson, members, a profit of 6.7 billion rand achieved for the period that we are reporting, compared to a budget of 1.965 on the left-hand side, that one there. Then we can have a look at the balance sheet, this one here, the statement of financial position, the balance sheet as it is commonly known. At the top line there, we see that the size or the volumes of our loans has increased from the opening figure at the beginning of the financial year of 53 billion, increased by about 4.8% or so to 56 billion. The other number, which I think is important to highlight, I've already touched on it, but it shows very clearly here, is the one indicated there as fair value adjustments. This is where the value of the listed shares and other unlisted shares gets adjusted on an ongoing basis. I did indicate that these shares, the listed stocks, do fluctuate, and we see here they fluctuated down a little bit for the period that we are reporting on. The cash resources of the organization, the line below that, the cash on hand and on call of the IDC itself, as at the closing period, was 11.1 billion, and we also are managing 7.5 billion at the time of third-party cash resources. So in other words, money that has been placed in our hands, for instance, the DTIC or other government departments for various programs, including the social employment fund that we talked about a few minutes ago. All that money is then invested or held in various call accounts by the IDC in order to undertake the various programs. So the reserves of the organization, this is an important measure of balance sheet strength. The equity endowment of the organization is certainly higher than it was at the same time in 2021. Yes, marginally lower than where it was at the beginning of the year, at the closing of the financial year in March 2022. But still a strong balance sheet of 102 billion rand by way of equity endowment. So this organization is well capitalized to continue to do its work. And then, of course, I made reference to the borrowing program. Members, as you can see, total borrowings really actually declining marginally from 38 billion total borrowings. This is the total borrowing outstanding amount that the IDC has borrowed over time cumulatively. It's not a borrowing for the 1 year, it's a cumulative amount. So it is very much flat, and we are managing prudently our debt profile as an organization so that it doesn't run away with us. Chair, let us move on to the next slide, which then seeks to consolidate and show the picture of how the major subsidiaries of the IDC affect the financial position of the IDC. So reading from the left hand to the right, you see the members, 6.7 billion is the profit that the IDC generated for this period to September. And then to that, you add in the green, 745 million, which is the profit that was realized by Fosco, one of our major subsidiaries. When you look at the graphs below, Fosco for the same period last year actually had generated a loss of 234 million rand. So it has turned around. The same with Grinding Media, which had a 15 million rand loss last year. Now, for the same period, a profit of 122 million. Grinding Media is a steel business, which used to be part of the former SCORE group of companies, SCORE Metal, out here in Germiston, here in Gauteng. The one entity in our stable which continues to be loss-making is a Small Enterprise Funding Agency, SEFA, reporting a net loss of 205 million for this period. We are aware, members, a cabinet decision has been made to transfer SEFA to the Department of Small Business. It is already anyway being managed under a compact by the Minister of Small Business, but the process of transferring it and merging it with SEDA, Small Enterprise Development Agency, that work stream is on the go, and we are advised that it is anticipated to be completed, I believe, if I recall correctly, by March, April next year, 2024. And then the various other accounting treatment of the various other subsidiaries is that big green line. And then when you consolidate all these numbers, members, the group itself, so in other words, the IDC plus its subsidiaries, generated a massive profit of 8.6 billion rand for that period to September 2022. Chair, if we may move forward and just highlight a couple of measures here of our portfolio quality. We keep a close eye on the risk profile of our portfolio. It gets categorized into low risk, medium risk, high risk, and our predominant effort has been to try and drive for a medium risk profile because we are a development finance organization, and we are indeed moving properly in that direction. Hence some of the indicators there. The impairments were fairly high relative to where we wanted them to be in terms of our targets, so they were out of line, but they have since retreated. I can report confidently that the trend is on the downward, and when we report for year end, we believe that these figures will be good. The non-performing loans, this is the debt book, down relative to where we thought it would be. 29% is where we were in actual terms, relative to 34% where we thought the book NPLs would be. So it's a good trend. So overall, the listed investments, as I indicated, declined. Hence, the growth in the value of reserves is a negative number there of 2.2%. It's really the same decline in the valuation of our listed stocks, mainly, that I referred to a few minutes ago. The state of economy is difficult. Many of the resources companies, mining houses, in which the IDC is an investor, have indeed seen a decline, a pullback in the levels of their profitability and valuations. But I'm happy to report, just in passing, Chair, that many of them are still in a good position. Sasol has paid us an interim dividend, Kumba has paid us an interim dividend, and so on and so on. So despite the difficulties that they are experiencing in the economy, the overall picture of the resources sector is still a resources sector that is contributing fairly well to the South African economy generally, but to the strength of the IDC in particular. Chair, I'm moving towards a close now, and I'm just reflecting briefly that we don't have numbers to report here regarding these KPIs. An entropy score is a measure of organizational culture health, and it should be low. It should be on the low side for the organization to be considered healthy. But we conduct these surveys only in April, Chairperson and members. So apologies that we are not able to report on this now, because we only conduct the surveys at the end of the full financial year. And so next time when we come here, we will report on these measures. Safe to say that in terms of our turnaround times, we are doing the best that we can, and indeed we are seeing improvements in the efficiency with which we turn around the timelines regarding applications. There are always outliers. We should be honest. There are always moments where we do fail and we take long to consider applications, but these are averages that we are considering here. Chairperson, the last slide is the one really where we say in terms of outlook going forward, slide 32, colleague. Thank you. Indicating here, Chairperson, in conclusion, that as we move towards year end, we are confident that our performance will come out as best as we can. We are confident, including the measures of transformation, where we indicated that we have fallen short as at half year. We are really anticipating a significant improvement in those performance indicators as we go towards the closure of the year, March next month. The financial results of the organization are going to be good and very strong, no doubt about it. Our group performance, as indicated, ending at 8.6 billion in September. We are confident that we are going to record a strong set of financial performance and a strong balance sheet that enables us to execute on our mandate. And then, of course, Chairperson, we are undertaking various initiatives to try and assist the country with the energy deficits that all of us are so much aware of. Chairperson, thank you so very much for allowing me to make this presentation to this honorable committee. My colleagues and I are here, and we will be happy to take advice, to take guidance, to take suggestions, to take questions of clarification, and engage with this honorable.
Thank you very much, CEO. Committee members, there we have the presentation of the IDC on their first and second quarter performance for 2022-2023. I will now take hands from committee members to discuss the report, and I think we can then just bring our agenda a bit forward and finish earlier than anticipated. I see the hands of Honorable McPherson and Honorable
Cuthbert, Chair, Mr.
Yes.
Thring, and Mr.
Honourable
Mbuyane.
Thring and Honorable Mbuyane.
I think Mr. Malamatia also, Chair.
And Honorable Malamatia. Okay. Thank you. In that order, Honorable McPherson.
Thanks very much, Chair, and thank you for the presentation. I've always been very interested in the IDC because it has an important role to play in offering, finance that is available at a better rate than what is in the market. But what I've always found impressive about the IDC is the hands-on approach they take to projects, to being deeply invested in businesses, with human capital as well alongside the financial capital. So it struck me really a couple of years ago when I started uncovering some of the deeply suspicious and quite frankly dubious investments that were being made by the IDC into politically aligned individuals, or not mostly, all with links to the governing party, and a lot of those loans just went completely bad and were never recovered, or attempts have never been made to recover that. I mean, and these weren't small amounts of money; they were amounts of 600 million rand into one senior ANC politician's business. Not a cent was ever paid back to it, and no attempt was ever made to try and recover that. In fact, I think that particular one was just written off as a bad debt. So I'd like to find out from the IDC, what mechanisms have they now put in, or have they continued to strengthen on, to stop loans being given to politically exposed individuals, those with links to the governing party, and what progress have they made over the last few years to recover those bad loans that have been made to those with political connections. And I think it would also be helpful if we can get a report on that as well. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Cuthbert.
Thanks very much, Chairperson. Thank you for the presentation. Chair, one thing you will notice in the presentation, and particularly if you look at the investments made by the IDC, is how heavily invested they are in the broader steel industry itself. And I think that, there's a line that's blurred through government policy as well as the role that the IDC plays. And if you look at, regulations that have been passed most recently, that, not only is government the referee, but a player in the game too. And this obviously has adverse effects on policy. And also, I like to believe that it affects the kind of evidence that is considered when making a policy or an investment decision by the IDC. Now, I submitted a written question to the Minister late last year regarding the amount of money that had been granted to the steel industry at large in the form of grants, loans, direct holdings in those particular companies. And I never ever received a response. And this was for the period of 10 years. I also wanted to know what the returns were on that investment, because you would notice that a number of the investments that have been made, particularly in direct holdings in companies, have not come to fruition and have actually been a net drag. And knowing that, you know, particularly upstream steel has largely been a subsidized industry in South Africa for most probably the last 100 years, I find it rather strange that, you know, despite the IDC's mandate, they would continue to support a failing sector. And I would just like to understand if the CEO is in a position to answer the questions that I previously put to the minister. And if it's supplement to the verbal response that he gives, if he could give me a little bit more detail and of a breakdown that he could provide in writing after the meeting, I would appreciate that.
Thank you. Honorable Thring.
Thank you, Chair. Let me also firstly just appreciate the presentation. Just two questions from my side. The first question is with regards to the impairments and write-offs. I think that when one looks at the impairments and write-offs, we see an operating income before impairments of some 9.7 billion. And the impairments and write-offs is just 1.3, just over 1.3 billion. And so while one may say that, you know, 1.3 billion, comparatively speaking to the operating income before impairments is not a huge amount, it's actually some 10%, and 1.3 billion is 1.3 billion, which can be used also to create jobs, and can create quite a number of jobs if used effectively. So my question is with regards to, even though the impairments may appear, relatively speaking, to be and the write-offs to be quite low, but what measurements are in place to ensure that that is reduced even further, so that you don't have those write-offs, and can we also have where were those write-offs actually done, to which companies, which individuals, where write-offs were actually done? Then my second question is with regards to the borrowings. The total borrowings, and I missed it. I'm not sure if it was 40 odd million, or 40 billion, but can you just clarify what the total borrowing is? And then that's the accumulated borrowing that you've indicated, and perhaps if you could give me a comparator or comparison of what the borrowings have looked like over, let's say, the last 5 years. Has it been increasing, decreasing? And then what is the annual cost of the borrowing? So what are we paying in terms of finance charges on those borrowings annually? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Thring. Honorable Mbuyane.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Chairperson, let me first welcome the presentation. Yeah, it shows that we are on the right direction moving forward in assisting our people and SMMEs. Chair, I'm delighted by the way in terms of the joint KPIs in terms of industrialization, transformation, and also the capable state in terms of service delivery. And also the improvement that it shows moving forward in assisting the Black industrialists, women ownership, also the youth entrepreneurship. Chair, let me just check in terms of the beneficiation and localization on the current challenges that we have, load shedding on the solar PV panels. How many do we have around being assisted? What is their program moving forward in assisting the localization and beneficiation around the PV solar panel? Chair, let me also welcome and acknowledge the assistance that they are providing to our SEZ, because seemingly we went to two SEZ, the one in Nkomazi and the one in Polokwane. They seriously need assistance there. Therefore, we acknowledge the initiatives and check as to how far are they in terms of assisting those SEZ moving forward. Chair, last week we had a meeting with the NEF, and they indicated a deal with and the working relationship with the DBSA of 500 billion, which seeks to assist the small, medium enterprises in various rural and development economies. So I just wanted to check with the IDC, the working relationship with the NEF, while like other entities like DBSA, they make such a deal with the NEF. So I want just to check in terms of the allocated and also the working relationship in rural and township development, more especially in women and youth entrepreneurship. Let me pause there for now. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Malamacha.
No, thank you, Chairperson. Let me also follow suit what Comrade Mbuyane did to welcome the report. Very decisive, straightforward, a report that is really putting their work on the map, especially in a very difficult economy. If one has questions, one can be referred to their presentation, especially on their case studies. I think they have done very well, especially on the industrialization. If we check how you have dealt with the whole and the achievement and the number of jobs created there, it really brings hope to the masses. I think that is what you exist for, and you must keep the good work. The other thing, Comrade Chairperson, if we don't deal with it in this meeting, will be wrong, because we don't want a situation people are politicizing work that is meant to deal with the legacy of apartheid, forgetting that themselves, they benefited from apartheid. Can't be correct that everything that is touched by an entity, we from the political, the ruling party, were time and again be quoted wrongly. From all the study, the case studies, there's no any membership that has been mentioned. And from other things that are going wrong, wherever, there's no membership that's supposed to be there. We are here governing. If they were not part of government, they would not be part of this study gate. So I'm saying I'm very worried about the manner in which a member there failed to deal with the report, which is very impressive, decided to cast suspicions of wrong views that the ANC time and again is mentioned on the wrong things. ANC is doing very well, and the ANC is not getting funds as this person is trying to do that. And that committee chairperson must be called to order. We are dealing with this in presentation. However, Comrade Chairperson, in acknowledging the good work, is just one question that I want the IDC to just assist me to say, in the first 2 quarters of the financial year, 46% of the applications were processed from the receipt of application to legal agreement, having been signed within the turnaround time business days against a target of 80%. This may create a backlog in the future. What is the IDC's view on this way? How is the IDC planning to remedy the situation in the next quarters to the financial year? Thank you, Chair. Let me pause there for now.
Okay, I think Honorable Malamacha has concluded. I think we can take the responses and not have a tea break, because we're sort of running an hour ahead of time. Can I hand over to you, a board chair, and of course, the CEO for responses, please.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Thank you very much, Chairperson, Honorable Chair of Committee, and the members. Thank you for those questions and observations. We will try our best to give substantive responses where we perhaps don't have clear answers. We will request Honorable Chairperson to be granted the opportunity to perhaps submit something in writing and so on. So let me start, and I want to invite my colleagues, David Jarvis and Isaac Malevu, to please raise their hands and assist me where they feel necessary to add. The first question was on, and I'm using the words that were used here about suspicious deals to politically connected people, not recovered, and so on. And then the question was, what mechanisms are in place to manage these kind of transactions, and what efforts go into recovery? I'm going to answer the question in two parts. Firstly, from the veracity of the IDC's assessment processes, due diligence processes. We have a subcommittee of the board, which is called the Social and Ethics Committee. And it is that committee, which is a statutory committee, by the way, in terms of the Companies Act. It is that committee which all transactions that have a person who is regarded in law as a politically prominent person, or a person perhaps or a counterparty that could be suspected of maybe inappropriate financial conduct and what have you. It is that committee of the board which is mandated to advise management on how to handle matters. So all instances where individuals are either associated with political establishments of any sort, from all angles, and so on, before the IDC decides to fund or not to fund such a transaction, it gets tabled at the highest committee of the organization, at the board social and ethics committee. It is not even management's prerogative. There we get appropriately guided as to how to proceed. And the second part of this is that all these matters are then reported on a transparent basis, on a quarterly basis, on the website of the IDC. All transactions that have people that have any political relations at all are then reported. So that, in our view, is the best governance model, because just because a person, as we know in law, has political affiliation or connectivity does not in itself preclude a person from getting services from a state organ. But it needs to be done in a manner that is transparent, is fair, and due process is followed and no favoritism is exercised. So in our view, Chairperson, sorry that I'm taking a little bit long, but I believe the governance system in the IDC that overlays how we do our work is so transparent and so robust. And I can certainly talk for the past 4 years or so that I've been at the IDC, that we report and we report and we report and we show these things and we are guided accordingly by the board. Now, the second part of the question was efforts with regards to recovery. Again, the prerogative to institute legal actions is delegated to various levels of the organization. And again, it is the board social and ethics committee which keeps an eye on us and keeps an eye on management and keeps us honest, so that no one in the organization can escape actions of recourse where it is warranted. So yes, it happens that we go all the way to try and recover investments from counterparties, but in some instances, you know, we may liquidate the business and get 10 cents to the rand, and we have to write off the rest. It's just the reality of our business and the reality of the circumstances that we face. I just want to emphasize, Chairperson, that we try and operate on the basis of it is not our first call to liquidate businesses and so on and so on. We try and engage in workouts and restructuring and to try and preserve jobs and preserve the capacity of the businesses. But yes, it does happen that we go all the way. Unfortunately, businesses fail and so on and so on. And as far as we are concerned, and I see the chairperson of the board will come in now, these are done on a transparent and on a non-favoritist basis. Everything is reported transparently to the audit committee and so on and so on. Chairperson of committee, Honorable Hermans, I see the chairperson of the board has her hand up.
Yes, I've noted her hand. Honorable Chair of the board.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to add, Chair, if I may, to the very correct response that the CEO has given, that it was following engagement with this committee, I think around 2016, 2017, that the IDC then put a policy that we will publish all business partners as soon as we have entered into agreements with them. So we don't wait for things to go bad, but they go on our website, I believe on a quarterly basis, at a minimum on an annual basis, so that we keep that thread of transparency. And if there's any further guidance from this committee, Chair, it will only make our work better. But we deal with every business partner in a transparent manner, and they are all out in the public, whether politically exposed or not. But we would appreciate an opportunity to improve on those governance structures. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Board Chair. Back to you, CEO.
Thank you very much, Honorable Hermans. The second question, it's quite a detailed one, Honorable Cuthbert. The steel industry, and you positioned and contextualized it in a sense of policy and investment decision and so on. The one statement that you made, Honorable Cuthbert, was that a response to your question, your parliamentary question, was not received. If I heard you correctly, please, you'll correct me if I'm wrong. So that I'm not able to address, because maybe my colleagues from DTIC can assist. What I can confirm, however, is that that particular question was sent to the IDC. We did provide a very, very comprehensive, long written out response, Honorable Cuthbert. And procedurally, we then send that comprehensive response to the principal ministry. I'm not sure if maybe there was an administrative glitch why the answer might have not reached you, Honorable Member. Chairperson of committee, we are happy to provide that written response. However, procedurally, we do go via our principal ministry. Happy to do that again today after this meeting and liaise with my colleagues at the DTIC in order to assist the committee with that response, Chairperson.
Yes, thank you very much. I think that will be correct. We will then just keep an eye on it so that we make sure that that information comes through to PC.
Yes,
because now it has been put in a PC meeting, so I think all members will then be privy to that response. Thank you.
And it's quite a detailed response. So with your permission, Honorable Cuthbert, let me not go through it, please. It's quite comprehensive, several pages of a response in line with the detailed questions that you had asked. There was a question on the impairments, Chair. Yes. I think the Honorable Member Thring observed that indeed our levels of impairments relative to our revenue profile are quite modest. I'm using my own word now, modest. But he wanted to know specifically what are the measures that are in place for us to contain that line item. So what happened, and I see my colleague, the CFO, will assist me now. I will just start off by saying, firstly, we have a specially dedicated portfolio management unit, portfolio management division. It is headed by an executive. So it is a team of highly trained professionals, and we have broken or compartmentalized our investments into three. The first is the debt book, the loans where we monitor NPLs, and we have a team of professionals that ensure that those who have to pay on a monthly basis or quarterly, they reconcile repayments on an ongoing basis and track any defaults. Then the second category are the equity investments that are unlisted. The unlisted ones where we have funded, medium-sized companies, 100 million here, 200 million there. So we have a team then that looks after those, and we work with the portfolio companies to develop, what we call value creation plans. So our professionals sit with the boards and the management teams of these portfolio companies, and we say, all right, where is your market position? How are you going to grow your market share? How can you enhance your margins on your product? How can you contain your cost profile such that you generate more cash flow? And so on and so on and so on. And so we then report to our board risk committee on a quarterly basis on the total portfolio. And then, of course, the third category are the large exposures, these big, listed investments like Sasol and Kumba and so on. And again, we have specialist teams that monitor the exposures there and track the performance and the fluctuations in valuations and things like that. So we have a very solid post-investment portfolio management strategy as well as institutional capability to keep an eye on each and every investment that we make. And Honorable Thring, I think this is what really helps us to rein in potential losses and rein in any potential impairments. My colleague, the CFO, Isaac Malevu, has his hand up. I think he's going to comment on this and maybe give a little bit more color to the second question of the member, i.e., can we mention for this period, which specific companies were these ones that we impaired and or wrote off on? I hand over to you, Honorable Chairperson, to assist my colleague.
Yes, thank you very much. And then the total borrowings, are you still coming to that? That was also part of Honorable Thring's question.
Yes, I'm coming to it. In fact, my colleague will cover it. Isaac?
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Good morning, members of Parliament. Chair, to maybe just add some details to the question asked by the honourable member. The specific clients, I'm just going to help us by separating what we refer as write-off, i.e. these amounts that exposures that we, after unsuccessfully recovering the full amount owing to us, either by liquidation or selling of security or collateral that we had, we are left with no choice but to write off those amounts. So of that 1.3, the amount is 654 million. And the specific business partners, number one is the Agricultural Bank of Zimbabwe. We did reach a full and final settlement arrangement with the Bank of Zimbabwe, and we had to write off about 207 million. The second one was New Horizon Waste Energy. The challenge with this particular business partner was that it failed to commercialize due to technical, market, and managerial shortcomings. As IDC, after selling our security, we managed to recover 50 million rands of the secured assets, and we had to write off 187 million. The third one is energy fabrication. Here, Chair, we are unfortunately defrauded by the directors of this company through the misapplication of funds. We did sell some of the assets. Unfortunately, we ended up writing off 144 million. And then the last one, Chair, is Capare Medical. We've decided to liquidate this because, again, Chair, with the advancement of technology, this business partner failed to commercialize its X-ray mammography machine. So that accounts largely for the 654 million. When we look at the other 660 million, their share, it relates to the provision that we're increasing on business partners which are showing distress. Number one. Number two is because we are increasing our exposure because we are supporting these businesses. In terms of the accounting standards, IFRS 9, we do need to account for expected credit losses on day one of advancing loans. So, for example, we do provide a revolving credit facility to Fosco, as we provide that, which accounts for about 800 million. In this instance, we had to increase our provision by 400 million. We also had to increase our provision on Kalahari and also Cementos Limitada. And Chair, there are other exposures such as Aya Investments, which is a hotel that's based in Ghana. As we all know, during COVID, they were having some challenges. So that investments, we needed to increase provision. So, Chair, that's really give you some color in terms of the impairments that includes write-offs. So not all of that 1.3 is write-off. Some of it is provision, which will be reversed as and when the clients continue to repay us and as we continue to work on the value creation plan that the CE alluded to. Moving on to the question on borrowings. Chair, our borrowings in the last 5 years have averaged around 36 billion rands. If you include managed funds, then they will increase to about 42 billion rands. Chair, you will note that in the current year, if you compare year on year, last year, if you include the borrowings all inclusive of the managed funds, were 38 billion, and this year it's about 40 billion. As a chair CE alluded, we did not need to raise funds because we had excess liquidity. However, in instances where as we build up our reserves for the disbursement targets, which are quite ambitious for the next 3 years, we did take advantage of low cost funding that was provided in the current year, which is about 1.6 billion rands. So we've done that, Chair. What is not perhaps included here is that we have not raised any debt which we think is onerous for the IDC, is expensive, and we've repaid some of the debt that's due and payable without refinancing that. So that's really what we've done, Chair, on borrowings. And I hope that covers the question. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. CEO, back to you.
Sorry, Chair. My one question also was just what is the annual cost in terms of those borrowings, that 40 odd billion? What does it cost IDC in terms of interests and so on?
CFO.
Thank you, Chair. So in the current year, we paid into the finance charges. Let's say annually, we're looking at about 1.8, 1.9 billion rands, Chair. And as you will recognize, Chair, as we all recognize, the interest rates have been increasing in the last 12 months. So we expect those finance charges to increase. But as we said, Chair, when we have an opportunity to repay and not raise additional debt, our cost of debt will remain relatively stable, if not reducing. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, CEO.
Thank you, Chair. And I now move on to a couple of questions that were raised and comments made by Honorable Mbuyane. Yes, the energy challenge is well known to us, so I don't have to repeat the challenge situation. Safe to say, Chair, we have had engagements as management with our board as recently as this month. And there is a proposal on the table which the board is considering, where we are ring-fencing, setting aside what we have come to call an energy resilience fund. And what we envisage, honorable members, is assigning for the next financial year 3.5 billion specifically to provide relief and interventions for businesses in the that are experiencing serious energy constraints. And we are talking here, we are not talking about the big IPP program of building 200 megawatts in the Northern Cape or what. That we will continue to do as our normal infrastructure energy finance program. What we are talking about here are immediate short-term interventions where businesses can come to the IDC, and we will figure out, honorable members, to try and make the pricing on this as concessionary as possible. So a small business in the township that requires, I'm just picking up a number, 50, 60, 100,000 in order to put up a solar system to cope so that the butchery is operating and the 5 or 10 people who work at that butchery can sustain. Many businesses in the township are of a service nature. We're talking here about funeral undertakers, and we are all aware of the complications. So what we are anticipating is sort of a rapid program where this is not a grant program, it's a lending program. We will try and make the funding as cheap as possible, but work with service providers who can very rapidly roll out these renewable energy solutions. The second intervention is more around industrial complexes. So our colleague Lionel October, whom you know very well, who runs the SEZ program, the discussions that we're having is that in a given SEZ, it is possible, and it has been done already here in Tshwane, that you can put up a 100, 150 megawatts unit just either within or just outside the whole SEZ zone, and then power the energy into the entire zone. And all the businesses inside don't have to put up a unit of energy generation all by themselves individually. So almost like a small power station, if you like, but which is a distributed energy system around that. And then, of course, the third intervention is more commercial shopping centers, already massive rollouts in that regard. We have a big pipeline of applications in that regard. And so we are hoping to assist in the short term through this dedicated resilience fund that we have proposed to our board for approximately 3.5 billion rand. Chairperson, our relationship with the NEF, it is what I can characterize as a strong working relationship. And it was demonstrable, Chairperson, when we were doing the work around the recovery after firstly the riots in Gauteng and KZN, as well as the flood relief. And what we had was joint teams working on transactions, funds allocated from the IDC, which the NEF could access in order to undertake the applications that they were receiving. So yes, we are sister organizations, and indeed ours is a very much aligned cooperation arrangement. Lastly, Chair, I think Honorable Malimecha was just expressing concern around the turnaround times and the possible delays that could translate into backlog. Yes, that's a well-made observation. The way we work, and my colleague, the Chief Operating Officer, Joanne Bate, is not here. We intervene on a weekly basis as executives. We have a forum, we call them huddles. So what happens is that every Monday, Joanne meets with the unit heads and the various professionals throughout the IDC. And they go case by case, one by one, through the applications and say, what is happening to application X? Why are we behind? How can we help to overcome? Are we missing financial statements, or are we missing this and that? And then as the executives, on a very hands-on basis, we try and intervene and solve for whatever hurdles or limitations that might be impeding the progress of the transaction. So that's how we try and do this. And as I indicated in my presentation, we do get it right most of the time. But yes, we do fall short in some instances. But what we derive comfort from is that really, in the majority of the cases, we do get our interventions right. So falling short and the deviations that are unacceptable are more exceptions really than the norm. Chairperson, Honorable Hermans, I think we covered all the questions.
Thank you very much, CEO. Can I check with the members whether there are any follow-up questions? We do have enough time. If not, we can then just conclude on this matter, members. Honorable Thring.
No, thank you, Chair. Chair, my question, just the last question, which I had forgotten
Unmute
about.
yourself, Honorable Thring.
Are you not able to hear me, Chair? I'm unmuted.
No, we can hear you now.
Okay. Yeah, Chair, my final question would just be around the issue of beneficiation. And I see that's also one of the core policies, beneficiation, localization. But just with regards to beneficiation, I'd asked the minister some time back in terms of whether we could keep a track on progress and to actually see whether we are making progress with regards to beneficiation. So if, for example, the amount of minerals that we are beneficiating in the year 2019, or when I think it was 2019 or so when I asked the question, 2020, if the amount of minerals was on platinum was, let's say, 100 tons, whatever the figure is, but now we are beneficiating 200 tons, and it's not only platinum. It pertains to steel, it pertains to copper, it pertains to diamonds, it pertains to gold, and so on. So what kind of targets are set with regards to beneficiation, because that's one of the low-hanging fruits in terms of job creation in South Africa. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. CEO.
Thank you, Chairperson. And if my colleague David Jarvis would like to add, I would invite him. Honorable Member, yes, indeed, between the IDC and the DTIC, that particular imperative that you underline has come out very strongly. So, firstly, we have begun to measure more, if you like, the investment quantums. So we would say, what kind of businesses, enterprises are engaging in beneficiation, in localization, or substituting some of the import products? We would do that and measure the input. Where we have not yet matured our reporting, sir, you're right, is on the actual output at an industrial level. So, and you make the example of what if the platinum sector is processing 20% of its total output today in South Africa? Can we measure and say for the next year and the other year, that processing index has gone from 20% to maybe 25 or 30? We are working, and I know David Jarvis, you must help me, between yourself and the DTIC colleagues, we are trying to mature a reporting framework. The reason I say we are trying to mature it is because it requires baseline data. You need baseline data from which you can then say, all right, I'm departing from index X and I want to add X plus 6% and so on and so on and so on. We are not yet there, to my knowledge, but I see my colleague David Jarvis wants to call me out in case I'm making false representations. Dave?
Chair, there's no false representations. I just wanted to add some color, Chair, with your permission. So
yes, you may proceed, Mr. Jarvis.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. Exactly what the CEO has mentioned. From next year, we will be introducing a measure that looks at the percentage, at the value add increases in the companies that we support. So we do want to track that as a measure. So we are currently doing setting the baselines, and like the CEO said, we will be introducing that measure next year, and that's in line with the department's objective to have the same kind of metrics across all of the agencies. So we will be measuring that consistently across DTIC family. Chair, I also wanted to add, the issue of beneficiation is extremely important, and we do want to move South African companies up the value chain. And we do use a value chain approach to look at all the opportunities, whether they're upstream, downstream, side stream, within services that can benefit from areas where there is a potential for growth. And a few years ago, when the CEO first joined IDC, we did restructure ourselves so that we would take those components. So where there's opportunity for projects to develop new industries, and particularly, for example, in the mining sector where we can look at beneficiation, we took those project developers out of the normal SBUs and into their own unit to make sure that they could concentrate on that work, which has been the traditional work of the IDC over the decades, which is to look at new opportunities that can develop new value chains within the South African economy. And we are having success in that space. Last year, we did fund, for example, new technology, Cal Technology, looking at refinery, how to refine minerals in a more efficient manner and also lead to greater job creation. So those are opportunities which we are seeking out. We have set aside the capacity to really focus on where can we improve beneficiation and grow opportunity, particularly in manufacturing within the economy. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. CEO, is there anything else you wish to add?
We are well covered, Chairperson. Thank you. That's all from our side in terms of the questions thus far. We are still available.
Okay, thank you so much. I see there's a question. Welcome, Honorable Burns. Your flight has landed safely. We see. Honorable Burns Nxamashe.
No, thank you very much. I just wanted to indicate that as I said to Andre that as soon as I land, I will log in. So I wanted to indicate to the chair that indeed I am part of the meeting. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much. So as we draw this meeting to a close, we note a board chair and CEO that in the quarters in which you have reported that you did not meet all your targets, and it's obviously a concern given this current state of our economy and the contribution that the IDC in particular is expected to make to the development of the economy. I think we should, as a committee, as a PC, continue to oversee you closely because of these concerns, and make sure that when you come and report to us again, that you have met the targets that you did not achieve during these two quarters that you have reported on. Can I just check with the board chair if there are any closing remarks she wishes to make?
Chair, thank you so much, and we appreciate the input and the encouragement. Chair, may I just assure the honourable members that management, since we saw these numbers in November, and they saw them a little earlier than us as the board, have put their shoulder to wheel and are trying to do as much as is feasible and possible to improve on that performance. I look forward, Chair, to the next engagement, because hopefully we'll have a few more greens in our dashboard of performance. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think let us see the agenda. I think we are finished with the question and answer. I think it's now the closure, Secretary.
That's correct, Chair.
Okay, so before we close our session, members, just an announcement in terms of our program for tomorrow of the PC. We received a letter from the Minister of Finance. Remember, we were going to meet with ITEC, DTIC, SARS, and National Treasury around tariff amendments and trade remedy recommendation. But we have received a letter from the Minister of Finance that National Treasury or SARS would coordinate with the DTIC Ministry in terms of our request. So we would therefore wish to brief the ministry on what the PC needs in terms of the tariff amendments, the item on tariff amendments or trade remedy recommendations. We will therefore not be able to schedule this meeting for tomorrow as planned, and we will then, after engagement with the department, put this matter back on the agenda for next quarter. Thank you, members. That concludes our deliberations for today. So we will not be having a meeting tomorrow. Thank you very much. The meeting stands adjourned.